Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going exploring some words.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, we're always talking about, big ideas and historical trends and all that. But
Right.
we thought, why not take a deep dive into some individual words?
I love it.
So these are actually from your suggestions this time.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 that we're going to look at today.
Okay.
Pull yourself together,
Okay.
pragmatic,
Mm-hmm.
daft,
Ooh, fun.
and ghost.
I like it. Good mix.
Yeah. So are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's unearth these words.
Okay, let's start with pull yourself together.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like that's something, that you hear like almost every week.
Absolutely. And I've probably said it a few times too.
Yeah, it's that classic advice, when someone's feeling a bit overwhelmed or,
Yeah, like they're losing their composure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like the definition, if you look it up in the dictionary is, urging someone to regain composure after a moment of emotional, distress or chaos.
Right. And what's so interesting about that phrase is that it's got a really strong connection to the Victorian era,
Oh, really?
where emotional control was so important. It
It was
was
like paramount.
paramount. Exactly. You had to keep it all together.
So it wasn't just about calming down. It was almost like you had to like conform to these very strict.
Social expectations, exactly. It's almost like society was demanding you to, tidy up your feelings and
Wow.
present this, composed front.
So like imagine saying this in like a, Victorian drawing room or something,
Yeah.
like
All right.
after Lady Beatrice's disastrous, piano performance.
Oh, yeah.
She had to pull herself together before, gonna have tea with the queen or something.
Exactly. And it really does conjure up this image of like almost literally piecing yourself back together,
Oh, yeah.
almost like tying your shoelace
Oh, that's a good visualization.
to present this proper front to the world.
Okay, so we've got pull yourself together, which is all about, keeping those emotions in check.
Right.
But then we shift gears to pragmatic, which is, kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
It's about getting things done.
Action oriented.
Yeah, we all know someone who's like super pragmatic.
Absolutely.
Right? They're not really like, head in the clouds. They're like,
Down to earth.
yeah, exactly.
Practical.
So the definition, officially is dealing with things sensibly and realistically,
Right.
favoring action over abstract ideas.
And what's really interesting is that the root of the word pragmatic is pragma,
Oh.
which means deed or act. So action was like baked into this word right from the beginning.
Oh, wow.
But I think it's interesting to consider, like, have you ever thought about the downsides of being overly pragmatic?
I guess, like if you're so focused on just what works and what's efficient.
Right. Could you miss out on like innovative solutions?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because you're so focused on just what's right in front of you.
Yeah. Do you have like a real world example of someone being pragmatic?
Sure. So imagine like a product launch, and everything just goes wrong.
Oh, yeah.
A pragmatic leader wouldn't waste time like placing blame. They would just jump right in,
Get it done.
assess the damage, figure out the core issues, and just implement the most efficient fix,
Wow.
even if it wasn't like the most glamorous or exciting solution.
Very cool. Okay, so we've gone from emotions to like practical matters.
Right.
Now let's
Let's have some fun.
get a little silly
Yeah.
with the word daft,
Daft.
which is a very British word.
Yes, very British slang.
Yes.
So have you ever heard anyone say daft?
Well, I have now.
Well, yeah. Well,
I've come across it in British novels and things like that.
Yeah, and it's such a fun word. It's like,
It's almost affectionate.
yeah, it's not like mean. It's like,
teasing. Yeah, exactly. So like the official definition is silly, foolish, or lacking good judgment, but it's always used in this like,
lighthearted way.
yeah.
It's not harsh.
So tell me a little bit about the history of this word.
So it actually comes from the Old English word gedeft,
Okay.
and that meant gentle.
What?
Isn't that interesting?
Gentle to daft.
I know it's a real journey that this word has taken through the English language.
Wow.
So it went from gentle to meek, and then eventually landed on this meaning of lacking common sense. But it still has this like lightness to it,
Yeah.
It's not a heavy word.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so fun. Like you could call a friend daft
Right.
for like their crazy scheme or something,
Exactly.
but you wouldn't call them stupid.
Right. You wouldn't say, oh, you're so stupid.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference.
It's subtle, but it's there.
Yeah.
Daft suggests this kind of lovable foolishness,
I like it.
almost with a hint of amusement.
Okay, so do you have like a mental image we can use for daft?
Oh, sure. Picture a duck just waddling into all sorts of ridiculous situations.
Okay, I like that.
That's our daft image.
All right, so we've talked about emotions, practicality, and now silliness.
Right.
So our last word is ghost.
Ooh.
And I feel like this one is particularly relevant.
Especially in our hyper-connected world.
Exactly. It's gone from, spooky apparition to...
A modern dating nightmare.
Yes, exactly.
It's taken on a whole new meaning.
Yeah, so like what do we mean when we say ghost now?
So basically it means to suddenly cut off all communication with someone
Okay.
without any explanation. And it often happens in like digital contexts,
Yeah.
dating apps, texting, all of that.
Yeah, and it really reflects how technology has changed the way we relate to each other.
Absolutely. It's so much easier to just disappear now than it used to be.
Yeah, like imagine in the past, you
Yeah.
couldn't just like ghost someone, you actually had to.
You had to face them.
Yeah.
Or at least write a letter or something.
Yeah, now it's just like,
A click, and you're gone.
yeah, poof, leaving the other person completely bewildered. So why do you think this word emerged like alongside the rise of social media and dating apps?
Well, I think it's a symptom of our always-on culture.
Oh, okay.
We're constantly bombarded with information connection, so it's easy to become overwhelmed.
Okay.
And ghosting is a way to just like quickly disconnect.
So do you think it says something about like our ability to empathize in the digital age?
That's a really interesting question, and I think it's definitely something to consider.
Okay.
Have we made it easier to detach from the emotional consequences of our actions?
Because we're behind a screen.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's give our listeners like a classic ghosting scenario.
Okay.
So imagine you go on a date, it's fantastic, you're feeling the spark,
Right.
and then
Nothing.
Yeah.
Radio silence.
yeah, no texts, no calls, just like you've been erased from their digital world.
And that's ghosting.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
leaves you feeling like,
What just happened? Did I do something wrong?
yeah, exactly, and that's what makes ghosting so painful. It's that lack of,
Yes.
you're just left wondering.
Yeah. So we've introduced these 4 words.
A good mix.
Yeah. But we're just scratching the surface.
Absolutely.
So when we come back, we'll dig even deeper into these words.
I can't wait.
And see what they reveal about us.
It's going to be fascinating.
So don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. We've been talking about these 4 phrases, pull yourself together, pragmatic, daft, and ghost.
Yeah. And we've kind of just defined them.
Right, just the surface level.
But now I want to like go a bit deeper.
Yeah, me too.
What do these words tell us about us? Like how we relate to each other, how we make decisions,
Right, like what's the deeper meaning behind these words?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, let's start with pull yourself together.
Okay.
We talked about how it originated in the Victorian era with all those strict social expectations about keeping your emotions in check.
Right. It was almost like emotional repression disguised as good manners.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder, does that phrase still hold the same weight today? That's a good question. Like, is it still relevant in a world where we're encouraged to express our feelings,
Right. Like, is it outdated or is it still a valuable tool
Yeah.
for navigating those moments when things get a little intense,
Yeah, I think maybe it's less about suppressing your emotions entirely and more about choosing the right time and place to express them.
Right. Like you wouldn't have a meltdown in the middle of a work meeting,
Exactly.
but you might confide in a friend later,
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
become more about emotional intelligence.
recognizing the
Like
context.
choosing your battles.
Exactly.
Okay, and speaking of choosing battles,
Yes.
let's go back to pragmatic.
Okay.
You mentioned that there could be some downsides to being overly pragmatic.
Right. Like you could miss out on creative solutions or become too rigid.
But is there also a danger in being too idealistic?
Oh, absolutely.
Like you're so focused on the perfect outcome that you never actually get anything done.
Exactly. You get stuck in analysis paralysis. You're so busy dreaming big that you forget to take action.
So it's all about finding that balance
Right. That sweet spot.
between being practical and being a visionary.
Exactly.
Okay, now I want to circle back to daft,
Okay.
that fun little British slang word.
Right.
We talked about how it suggests a lovable kind of foolishness,
Right.
but I'm wondering if it's always used in such a lighthearted way.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Even words with playful origins can be used to hurt.
Right.
Like daft might be affectionate between friends.
Yeah.
But in other contexts, it could be condescending.
Yeah, it's like calling someone silly.
Right.
It could be teasing or it could be dismissive.
Exactly. It all depends on the tone and the relationship.
Context is everything.
Absolutely. And it reminds us to be mindful of our language you know,
Yeah.
and how it impacts others. Even seemingly harmless words can sting.
Okay. And speaking of words that can sting,
Let's talk about ghosting.
yeah, we established that it's become pretty common in the digital age.
Right.
But I want to understand the psychology behind it. Why do people ghost?
Well, I think for some people,